In the bustling heart of downtown Chicago, a single moment unfolded that would ripple through the city and beyond. It was a busy Saturday afternoon at Elite Emporium, a high-end department store known for its luxury goods and impeccable service. The crowd was thick, the air buzzing with the hum of shoppers and the clink of registers. But in an instant, everything changed. A store manager, in a shocking display, slapped a black woman across the face in front of a stunned crowd. What he didn't know, what no one in that store could have guessed, was that the woman he struck was none other than Camille Harper, the billionaire owner of Elite Emporium itself. Camille Harper stood in the women's fashion section, her presence unassuming. She was dressed simply in a tailored blazer, dark jeans, and a pair of understated loafers. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she wore no jewelry save for a single gold watch that glinted subtly on her wrist. To anyone passing by, she was just another shopper, perhaps a professional stopping in to browse. But Camille was no ordinary customer. At 42, she had built Elite Emporium from a single boutique into a national chain, her business acumen and quiet determination turning her into one of the wealthiest women in America. Few knew her face, though. Camille preferred to let her brand speak for itself, rarely stepping into the public eye. That day, she had come to the Chicago flagship store unannounced, as she often did. Camille liked to walk her stores, observing the operations, the staff, the customers. It was her way of staying connected to the empire she created. She moved through the aisles, her eyes sharp, taking in every detail. The way the displays were arranged, the speed of the cashiers, the demeanor of the employees. She noticed a young sales associate struggling to assist a customer with a return, and she lingered nearby, listening to the exchange. The customer, an older woman, was growing frustrated, her voice rising as she waved a receipt in the air. Camille stepped closer, intending to offer a discreet suggestion to the associate. She'd done this before, slipping in as a helpful bystander to nudge staff toward better service without revealing her identity. But before she could speak, a man in a crisp suit approached. He was tall, with a stern face and a badge that read Store Manager Derek Collins. His presence commanded attention, but there was a hardness in his eyes that Camille didn't like. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," Derek said to the older customer, his tone clipped. "We can't process your return if you're going to cause a scene." The customer bristled. "I'm not causing a scene. Your employee doesn't know what she's doing." Camille frowned. The situation was tense, but Derek's approach was all wrong. She'd trained her managers to de-escalate with empathy, not to confront customers with demands. She stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Excuse me. I think there's a misunderstanding here. If you check the receipt, you'll see the purchase was within the return window. It should be a simple fix." Derek turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as he looked Camille up and down. "Who are you?" he demanded. "This doesn't concern you." "I'm just trying to help," Camille said evenly. "The customer's upset, and I think we can resolve this quickly if—" "I said this doesn't concern you," Derek interrupted, his voice louder now. A few shoppers nearby turned to look. "Step back and let me handle my store." Camille's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. She wasn't used to being dismissed, but she wasn't about to reveal her identity. Not yet. "I understand you're the manager," she said, her tone still measured. "But your approach isn't helping. Maybe if you listen to the customer." Derek's face reddened. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "I don't need advice from someone like you. Back off, or I'll have security remove you." The words, "someone like you," hung in the air, sharp and loaded. Camille's eyes narrowed. She'd heard that phrase before in different contexts, and it always carried the same sting. But she wasn't here to argue. She was here to observe, to ensure her stores lived up to the standard she'd set. She took a deep breath, ready to step away and deal with Derek later, through proper channels. But Derek didn't stop. The crowd was growing now, drawn by the rising tension. Shoppers whispered to each other, phones subtly raised to capture the scene. The older customer, still clutching her receipt, looked between Camille and Derek, unsure what to do. Derek, sensing the attention, seemed to double down. "You think you can just walk in here and tell me how to do my job?" he snapped. I've been running this store for years. I don't need some random woman interfering. Camille's patience was wearing thin, but she kept her voice steady. I'm not interfering. I'm suggesting you treat your customers and the people around you with respect. That was when it happened. Derek's hand shot out, a sudden, shocking motion. The slap connected with Camille's cheek, the sound cutting to the hum of the store like a gunshot. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The older customer dropped her receipt. The young sales associate froze, her eyes wide. Camille staggered back, her hand instinctively touching her face, where a red mark was already forming. For a moment, the store seemed to hold its breath. Camille stood still, her expression unreadable. Derek, realizing what he'd done, faltered, but only for a second. Then his face hardened again, as if he could justify it. You were out of line, he said, his voice shaking slightly. You can't just... Enough, Camille said, her voice low but commanding. The word carried a weight that silenced Derek instantly. She straightened, her eyes locking onto his. The crowd was still watching, some recording, others whispering. But Camille didn't care about them. She was focused on Derek, on the man who had just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Do you know who I am? She asked, her voice steady, almost eerily calm. Derek scoffed, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I don't care who you are. You're out of here. Camille's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. Oh, you will care, she said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a slim card holder, flipping it open to reveal a business card. She held it out, not to Derek, but to the young sales associate, who was still standing nearby, looking like she might faint. Call this number, Camille said. Ask for Margaret. Tell her Camille Harper is at the Chicago store and needs her immediately. The associate took the card with trembling hands, her eyes darting between Camille and Derek. She nodded and hurried to the back, clutching the card like it was a lifeline. Derek's confidence wavered. Who's Margaret? He demanded. Camille didn't answer. She turned to the older customer, who was still standing there, wide-eyed. I'm sorry for what you've experienced here today, she said. Your return will be processed, and I'll personally ensure you're compensated for your trouble. The woman blinked, confused but grateful. Thank you, she murmured. By now, the crowd was buzzing. Some were still filming, others whispering Camille's name, trying to place it. Derek's face was a mix of defiance and growing unease. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a woman in a sharp blazer emerged from the back of the store. She was older, with silver hair and an air of authority. This was Margaret Voss, Camille's longtime COO, and one of few people who knew her on site. Ms. Harper, Margaret said, her voice crisp as she approached. I got here as soon as I could. Derek's face went pale. Ms. Harper? He repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Margaret ignored him, addressing Camille directly. What happened? Camille touched her cheek, where the mark was still visible. Mr. Collins here decided to handle a customer dispute with violence, she said. He struck me in front of witnesses, after dismissing a customer's valid concerns and refusing my attempt to de-escalate. Margaret's eyes flashed with anger, but her voice remained professional. I see, and you'd like to proceed how? Camille looked at Derek, who was now visibly sweating. The crowd was still watching, their phones still raised. She could feel the weight of their attention, but she kept her focus on Derek. Mr. Collins, she said, you're relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your actions today are unacceptable, and I don't tolerate that in my stores. Your stores? Derek stammered. You're Camille Harper? Yes, Camille said simply. And you just assaulted the owner of Elite Emporium. The crowd erupted into murmurs. Phones were lowered as people began to process what they'd just witnessed. Derek's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. 2 security guards appeared, summoned by Margaret, and they flanked Derek, who looked like he might collapse. As the guards led him away, Camille turned to the crowd. I apologize for what you've seen here today, she said, her voice carrying across the store. This is not the standard we uphold at Elite Emporium. If anyone has concerns or complaints, Please speak to Margaret or any of our staff. We're here to make this right." The older customer, still clutching her bag, approached Camille hesitantly. "You're really the owner?" she asked. Camille nodded. "I am, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. Let's get your returns sorted out." What followed was a masterclass in leadership. Camille stayed at the store for hours, personally overseeing the resolution of the customer's issue, speaking with staff, and addressing concerns from shoppers who'd witnessed the incident. Margaret worked alongside her, coordinating with the corporate office to ensure Derek's termination was processed and that an investigation into his conduct would follow. News of the incident spread quickly, first through social media posts from the crowd, then through local news outlets. By evening, the story was trending nationwide. Store manager slaps black woman, unaware she's the billionaire owner. Camille, however, didn't linger on the attention. She returned to her office that evening, her cheeks still stinging faintly, and began reviewing the store's operations. She wasn't one to dwell on personal slights, but she was determined to ensure nothing like this happened again. Over the next few weeks, she implemented new training programs for managers, emphasizing de-escalation and respect. She also personally reached out to the older customer, offering her a generous gift card and a handwritten apology. The incident became a turning point for Elite Emporium. Camille's response, calm, decisive, and focused on accountability, earned her respect from employees and customers alike. Derek, meanwhile, faced legal consequences for assault, his career in retail effectively over. The story of that day in Chicago became a case study in leadership, a reminder that power isn't always visible, and that those who wield it quietly can still command a room. Camille Harper continued to walk her stores, her presence still unassuming, her eyes still sharp. And though she never sought the spotlight, the world now knew her name.